That's right. Let's go across now to Abhishek Manu Singhvi, spokesperson for the Congress Party. Mr. Singhvi, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. There was a meeting between the government and Congress Party leaders today. The Finance Minister seems to suggest the meeting was successful. Are we given to understand now that the Congress will support the GST bill in the Rajya Sabha?
Well, I think continuing with the notion that no news is generally good news, let me point out 4 or 5 things. Certainly there has been a movement, certainly there has been a convergence. The very fact that a constitution amendment bill will come up day after tomorrow is itself indicative of the significant movement. Having said that, we all understand that the devil, both God and the devil, lie in the details. A large part of such a comprehensive regulatory scheme will have to be worked out in the Act, and let me make it clear that the Act has a large number of states yet to come on board. There are differing states of different viewpoints, and that is where the government still has to work. But that is for later, and I think the two-part division will make it work with the time available in between for negotiations. As far as the constitutional structure is concerned, it gives a great impetus to the whole thing. It creates a constitutional structure. It becomes a vital declaration of intent because it is found in the highest document of the land, the Constitution of India, that we are having a GST. It makes it inviolable. It makes the momentum and the direction much quicker for the Act to come into place. So I think it's a good thing. And the nitty-gritty and the details will have to be still worked out. Now, why the Act? Even beyond the Act into the rules. So I think between this session and the next
one,
that part will have to be taken care of.
Let's cross each bridge as we get to it, Mr. Singhvi. So can I get a straightforward answer, sir? Will the Congress now support the GST bill? Is it a done deal now as far as the constitutional amendment bill itself is concerned?
As far as the constitutional level is concerned, my answer is almost yes, except that I don't want to see any nasty surprises in the text which will come only day after tomorrow. So the answer is a very frank one, but obviously it depends on the government that they will give the Constitutional Act a bill which is more or less a bare bones structural thing, and I see no particular problem.
In the meeting that the Congress had with the government today, I'm assuming that a lot of the details that you were hoping for, the clarifications that you were seeking from the government ought to have addressed those clarifications, which is why we're now seeing the Congress virtually come on board, as you said, almost yes, as far as the GST bill is concerned. What would you specifically be looking for, and what are the crucial amendments that the Congress may still move?
Well, I'm not at liberty to disclose to you the contents of the meeting, but the small caveat I put was only because I have not seen the formal text as brought up day after tomorrow. But I see no particular problem. 1%, as you've just now said in this program, is a good change. There is no other major breaking point at the constitutional level. So I do not see. I think the real issues are the ones which come to the second stage. And also what I think is a good move is that this pragmatism has been shown, that you take away the contentious issues from this constitutional level bill and put them into further negotiated package in the second one. So I think that's a good move. I don't see any particular problem.
All right, so that is the big headline that is coming in there from Abhishek Manu Singhvi, senior leader of the Congress Party and Congress Party spokesperson, saying that the Congress will support the Goods and Services Tax Constitutional Amendment Bill. Of course, several other issues require negotiation, but that will be addressed later as part of the law and as part of the rules. But Mr. Singhvi, if I could ask you a very quick question, whether some clarification or clarity has been provided by the government to the Congress Party on some sort of a resolution that we are given to understand that was arrived at the State Empowered Finance Ministers meeting. We are also given to understand that perhaps some sort of a guiding principle to arrive at the rate has been decided on in that resolution, and maybe it will be a part of the constitutional amendment bill. Do you have any clarity on that?
Well, I think, first of all, you are inviting me almost to the verge of breach of privileges. if I start discussing matters which are hotly parliamentary at the moment, and I don't intend to do that. Secondly, you cannot discuss confidential details of a meeting and yet the bill which has not seen the light of the day. But let me tell you one thing clearly, the very fact that you are having for the first time the Constitutional Amendment Bill being introduced, it is obvious to anybody who knows arithmetic that a Constitutional Amendment Bill would not be introduced in terms of for consideration, that is, introduced for consideration, had it not been a great degree of convergence. So let's leave it at that. Why get into the nitty-gritty? Because that's something which will have to be worked out on the floor of Parliament. But I feel very positive as far as the constitutional bill is concerned.
You're absolutely right on that front. That is, of course, the big story. Unless we had the government manage the support of the Congress party, and of course all the other regional parties were already on board, they probably wouldn't have gone ahead with tabling the bill on Wednesday. So it seems like it is all clear now as far as the Constitutional Amendment Bill is concerned. Very quickly, Mr. Singhvi, what should we expect now as the next step?
That's the real one. You're absolutely right. You see, this is a joyous occasion because the structure is there, but it is by no means even half the journey. You see, there is a huge amount of detail to be worked out, and to be very honest, Shirin, you forget the Congress. There are states out there which have nothing to do with the Congress, which have very, very strong differences in the detailing, in the operational reality. For that matter, even if you take out issues which have been left out, you know, issues like alcohol and other things. So I think those are details which have to be still worked out, and below the act is a whole fasciculus of rules which we are ignoring. We all understand that big, you know, as Thomas Hardy said, take care of the small things, the big things will take care of themselves. Now the small things are still to be taken care of, and that is where I think the challenges of the government, which is very little to do with the Congress party, but to do with many, many different perspectives of different states. And that, I think, should take minimum the time between now and the next session, and we'll be very happy and lucky if that gets through by the next session.
You're absolutely right. A lot of the contentious issues will now need to be addressed. The Constitutional Amendment Bill is only the first step. It's the first big step, though, and that's the Congress party telling you on CNBC TV 18 that they will support the GST bill. Mr. Singhvi, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Well, the other big story this evening, Raghuram Rajan has redeemed his promise on liberalizing the banking sector. The RBI has put together bank licenses on tap. Now, this basically means that private companies can apply for bank licenses as and when they choose. However, large conglomerates have been kept out. Latha joins us now with the key highlights. So, Latha, this is a big moment for the banking sector. We don't know who will be the takers or how many takers there will be, but Raghuram Rajan redeeming a promise of his and liberalizing or further liberalizing the banking sector.
It's difficult to say. Certainly finance companies will make the cut. Well, as you said, it will be promoters or entities with a successful track record of 10 years alone will be eligible. That itself whittles down the number. But the important filter always is that they must pass the fit and proper test. Now, that itself is not elaborated, but we know from past experience that means all regulators should give a clean chit. You must not have pending inquiries with the Enforcement Directorate or with the CBI, the CVC, likewise with SEBI or IRDA or PFRD, and that's a tall order. Pending cases will also disqualify some of the promoters. Also, conglomerates which have over 40% of the money coming from non-financial areas will not be eligible. So that may put a question mark on L&T Finance, where the promoter, has a large part of coming from non-finance businesses. Also, there is in the previous licenses, you had to set up a non-operative financial holding company, and that company will own the bank, which is why IDFC had to go through a fairly tumultuous experience. Now that is not needed if you're only handling one single kind of business. So it remains to be seen whether IDFC will reverse merge. Now this non-financial holding company is needed where the group has several businesses. And what will be the job of the non-financial holding company? It has to ring-fence the bank from the non-financial activities. It has to ring-fence the bank from other financial activities which are regulated by others like insurance or pension or broking activities. So the broking activity should not mingle with the banking activity in any fashion, and that shall be the role of the non-financial holding company. Initially, promoters have to have 51% plus, and thereafter, of course, they will be committed to list the entity and then reduce their stake in 10 years to 15%. All those are subsequent rules. But basically, I would think it's the filter of fit and proper, and that itself will weed out several aspirants.
Fair enough. Thanks, Lata, for joining in with that. In fact, here is Raghuram Rajan speaking in September 2013. After taking charge as the governor, he then made a promise to liberalize the bank license regime, which is exactly what he did today. Take a look.
I hope to announce licenses within or soon after the term of Deputy Governor Anand Sinha, who has been shepherding the process. I remind you his term expires in January 2014. We will not stop with these licenses. The RBI has an excellent document on its website exploring the possibility of differentiated licenses for small banks and wholesale banks, the possibility of continuous or on-tap licensing, and the possibility of converting large urban cooperative banks into commercial banks.
Well, that's the RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan talking about the on-tap license, and the RBI today releasing those guidelines. Joining us now to discuss this further is Ashwin Parikh of Advisory LLP. Sir, appreciate you joining us here. What do you make of the guidelines that have been announced by the Reserve Bank of India, and do you believe that there will be enough takers once again, given the fact that conglomerates have been left out?
Well, I mean, if we look at, let's say, the number of applications which the RBI received last time, there were about 24 applications. And out of those 24 applications, and we all know only 2 of them got the licenses. But, I mean, we also know for a fact that out of those 24 aspirants, I mean, originally it was 25, then Tata's withdrew, if I'm not making a mistake. So, I mean, now, large part of these, let's say, applications were from conglomerates or from business houses as it was defined then in the guidelines. This time around, even the draft exposure and now the guidelines very clearly say that the business houses will not be eligible for applying. So that reduces the number from out of 24 to very few. However, there are 2 things which are mentioned. One is there is a clarification on holding companies now, and that is to have a non-operating holding company. And also there is now clarity in regard what could be treated as a financial conglomerate compared to a business house. And to that extent, I thought some mid-size NBFCs or professional NBFCs where the promoters do not have any other interest except the financial services, perhaps may become eligible. So I am seeing about 4 or 5 people in that space. Then, of course, if you look at the new guidelines, I mean the draft and the guidelines now, you do find that there is a good room that is being created for individuals, professional individuals who have been bankers in the past and who can really mobilize 500 crore of capital. 2 things have happened once again over there. Foreign capital can really go all the way up to 74%, which means it allows these kind of professional promoters who've been bankers earlier with foreign banks or with Indian private sector banks, who can really go out, raise money and put up an application. From the fit and proper point of view, as far as these entities or these people are concerned, I mean that is individuals are concerned or group of individuals are concerned, mainly the examination would be in terms of what work they did in banking and whether it was for more than 10 years or at least 10 years. So I mean, I thought the guidelines are encouraging professional bankers, I mean, who are in a position to mobilize capital to really come forward and set up the kind of banking and put up an application. So we will find a good mix of 2.
Mr. Parikh,
somewhere along I thought the guidelines are still not very clear about
I'll come back to you on where you feel the guidelines are not clear, but let me ask you on a very interesting point that you brought about, that the guidelines do seem to suggest that professional promoters will be encouraged, or at least they have leeway now to enter by way of a license. Do you see this as being a real possibility? Have you seen, there's been a lot of rumors, but do you see real interest of people who've had banking experience both in India, perhaps even abroad, coming together, putting together that requisite capital and seeking an on-tap license?
Well, actually, you know what has happened. This is very interesting. I mean, I cannot disclose the names of these entities, those individuals. But after the draft guidelines were issued, two people have really approached me, two sets of people. One from a US banking kind of a background, and the other from the European banking background. And these people have showed interest, and they are now working towards. So they had some time between the time the draft was done, and I'm confident that there would be more. So that was one observation I was making. And then there was, of course, one small observation which said that the broker, that is a security broking organization, the entities, which have grown adequately, who also run loan books now, and they come under RBI from the point of view of other financial service activities. There is no clarity this time. Last time there was a mention in the previous guidelines saying that those who are engaged with speculative business, and speculative business was very categorically defined as business in securities or in real estate. This time around, I'm not seeing, going through the guidelines in detail, threadbare, but I'm not seeing that kind of a clarification. So one doesn't know what would really be the fate of such people. But I suppose if there is nothing against, then they could also come forward. In which case, we can still look at about 15, 16 applications.
Okay. How real is the possibility, and very quickly, we're running out of time, Mr. Parekh, and really from a business case point of view, because there's been a lot of talk about NBFCs, but from a business case perspective, do you really see NBFCs keen to make the switch over?
Well, the biggest attraction is the cost of funds. Today they may mobilize the funds at a certain rate, which could well be in the region of about 12 plus. Whereas if they mobilize deposits and if they do CASA, then I suppose their effective cost can come down to 6.5–7%. And with a reduction in interest rates rates going further down or possibly going down, we may find that the banks, there is a good strong case of 5% spread, which can really attract NBFCs to get into, let's say, the banking business. So that attraction was always there, I thought, but it's real. That attraction is real.
All right, Mr. Parekh, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate you joining us here on the big story of the day, the Reserve Bank putting out its guidelines for on-tap licenses. Ashwin Parekh, a former US banker and a former European banker, my brain is whizzing away trying to guess who those could be, but thanks very much for joining us with that story, sir. But the big political story today, Gujarat Chief Minister Anandiben Patel has stepped down. In a Facebook post, Patel has cited her age and said that Gujarat needs a fresh face. Patel will turn 75 this November. She's been facing flack over the recent Dalit protests in the state and also for failing to curb the Patidar agitation. However, BJP President Amit Shah said Anandiben Patel has now set a new benchmark for others to follow.
2017 के अंत में गुजरात में विधानसभा के चुनाव आने वाले हैं और राज्य में हर 2 साल के बाद होने वाली महत्वपूर्ण वाइब्रेंट गुजरात समिट में भी जनवरी 2017 में आने वाली है। नवनियुक्त मुख्यमंत्री को पूर्ण समय मिले, इसलिए मैंने 2 माह पहले पार्टी के वरिष्ठ नेतृत्व के सामने इस जिम्मेदारी से मुक्त होने की विनती की थी। मैं फिर से इस पत्र के माध्यम से पार्टी के वरिष्ठ नेतृत्व को मुझे मुख्यमंत्री पद की जिम्मेदारी से मुक्त करने की विनती करती हूं।
आनंदीबेन एक लंबे समय से पद मुक्ति के लिए पार्टी को बताती रही, मगर एक उपचुनाव आया, गांधीनगर कॉरपोरेशन का चुनाव आया, अलग अलग कारणों से इस पर विचार नहीं हुआ। अब इन्होंने जो पत्र मुझे लिखा है मैं पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड के सामने रखूंगा और पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड उस पर निर्णय करेगा।
Well, that's the end of the road as far as Anandiben Patel is concerned. Sources suggesting that she will be moving to a state as a governor, perhaps even Punjab, but that is, of course, unconfirmed information at this point in time. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of What's Hot. Do stay tuned because we've got lots more coming up on markets forward. There will be plenty to watch out when markets open for trade, including a lot of those stocks like IIFL, which may move on the back of the Reserve Bank's guidelines. So that and more. And, of course, earnings. Indigo announcing its numbers post-market hours. Tech Mahindra as well. Details when we return.